Hi people, it's me again obviously, Morino Ravenberg as always. Yeah, in this video I'm gonna discuss, as the header as always gives away, correspondences. I'll be reading from my article first, which is something that I regularly do, and I'll be elaborating on everything I wrote down. This video will be embedded in the article, and you can also find the link to the article for those people that want to read what I've written down. Linked in the description of this video, as always again, or at the very least as usual. Now, correspondences, factual versus spirit correspondences, factual versus relative. I've already mentioned this in the past, but I've never brought it up that I can remember as an actual subject. Never, not once. I've only made statements here and there in a live stream here and there, and that's all. Now, so yeah, let's get right down to it. Now, something that practitioners, people that practice magic obviously and use magical workbooks, things that they've noticed is that when it comes to spirit correspondences, especially when I discuss correspondences, they're different. I don't think a lot of people have noticed, but they're different than what's mentioned in those grimoires. For example, in the Goetia, it's said that a spirit is, for example, Saturnian, or that this spirit aligns with the zodiac sign Sagittarius, and then I say something else, etc., or someone else out there says something else. I don't know about the other person, but I'm simply saying. And some people might be conflicted and they can't understand exactly what's going on. As an okay, so what the fuck is? No offense to the spirit, as any given example, as any spirit as a given example. What the fuck is the what the fuck is this spirit? What is this spirit? Is this spirit Saturnian or what is it? What zodiac sign does this spirit align with? Sagittarius or something else? What is it exactly? It's kind of annoying. It's like, for example, asking 5 different stores that sell the exact same item, how much it is, what the market price is. So you're not asking what price they charge. What is the factual market price? What's the MRSP? And all of them give you completely conflicting items. For example, you want to buy a diesel generator. One tells you $6,000, the other one tells you $12,000, the other one tells you $500, the other one tells you $1,500, and the other one tells you $10,000. You're like, okay, what the fuck is going on? What's the base retail price? I don't get it. Exactly. It's gonna sow seeds of confusion in your mind because you want to establish a factual price that applies across the board. Something that applies to every single item or every single unit of the item that you have your sights set on. So the item in this metaphorical question being, or this in given example being a diesel generator. Now, this video isn't going to be long. I'm going to keep it real simple for you. When you seek spirit correspondences in a grimoire, in a magical workbook, those correspondences apply to that spirit specifically within that given context. Remember that last part very clearly. Within that given context. If you see a spirit from the Goetia, so the Lesser Key of Solomon, Book 1, and it says this spirit is martial in nature, blah 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 blah, blah etc., then those things apply to that spirit specifically. Now, take into account that I am not discussing misinformation and misleading information, okay, that are regularly or that have been more often than not embedded in these workbooks as a means of deterring people that don't deserve this power, because someone that is truly serious about it and whatnot will be able to see through it, at the very least, through trial and error, or they'll have the well-developed level of intuition to actually understand that, hey, that's not true, this is misleading, or this isn't true, it's misleading, it's misinformation. Yeah. I'm not talking about that. That's a separate matter altogether. But while I'm briefly discussing it, it just is what it is. I've already discussed it in the past. You can check that link in the description of this video as well. In terms of misinformation, I already have an article and a video on that, so I'm not going to really discuss it. All you need to remember is that, yeah, in old magical workbooks, they had misinformation, grimoires. They deliberately did it to throw people off that aren't worthy in their opinion or in their level of insight rather than opinion of this, the knowledge as well as the power that comes along with it. Their consensus was, someone that really deserves this will literally wade through all the crap that I wrote down and will be able to distinguish the actual value from said crap. from the proverbial crap. The person will be able to wade through everything and will be able to align everything properly for themselves, and thereby be able to reap the benefits which they deserve if they actually make it that far. It's like jumping hurdles until you reach the finish line. Don't expect it to be a smooth ride. Nothing that's worth doing is, let alone something as invaluable as divine power. Now, in any case, back to the main subject. That was simply a sideline. Yeah, so if you see a spirit that's mentioned that, hey, this spirit is lunar, it is said in this grimoire, in this magical workbook, that doesn't literally mean that the spirit is lunar and the attributes that align with this spirit. It simply stands for that at the very least within the scope of this magical system, that spirit is lunar or is to be called forth as such. That's why. Also something I noticed, honestly, I can see where magicians and sorcerers from the past, if they, for example, misidentify the spirit, where it came from. I understood that, and I was like, yeah, I can understand where it's coming from. Because obviously they didn't have access to the modern amenities and whatnot, such as, especially of a technological nature, that the likes of which we nowadays do. And that's the difference. When people see me covering spirits, they often see me specifically refer to the planetary and the zodiacal alignment of a spirit. How I do that is through astrology. I already know how to do it. I know how to identify it. People whom I've taught this to can also do it. And in my astrological course, which you can also find linked in the description, you can also, I also teach people how to do it. It's just plain and simple orrery astrology. I've done several videos in which I, for example, deal with orrery astrology, but regarding different subjects. I rarely share my spirit orrery charts with people. But I know how this system works, and I know that I can factually identify a spirit, and I can confirm beyond a shadow of a doubt their correspondences, at the very least in general, their correspondences, whether it be planetary, zodiacally, as well as abilities. All of that is mapped out for me in a factual manner, similar to a calculator, you needing to calculate something, 2 plus 2 equals 4, based on the law of logic. Astrology in this context at the very least, as well as overall, works with the same logic-based system. It's like math on steroids mixed with algebra and whatnot and physics. It's ridiculously hard, depending on who you are, to be able to do it, but for the average person, it's definitely very, 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 very complicated, okay? I can do it because of my insane skill, even if I say so myself, and knowledge and wisdom, coupled with especially my natural ability. Because, you know, I'm a born astrologer. It just comes to me naturally, the same way that I'm a born occultist. But I'm actually, theoretically, just before I was who I was, just my default base personality, my God-given personality, if you will. Everything is God-given, but I mean, just from the get-go, since birth. On paper, I'm a better astrologer than an occultist. But that's also why I started out with astrology first. In hindsight, it wasn't a coincidence. Then again, nothing ever is, from an existential perspective as well as overall. But yeah, bottom line is I am better with astrology than, the old me that's long dead, the natural Moina Ravenberg. He was better with astrology than with occultism, better with astrology than dealing with spirits. When I was busy learning it, no one taught me anything. I was self-taught, no course. I didn't have the luxury or the convenience of having someone like me, which can teach someone, which can teach him everything and whatnot, and put all the ducks in a row and vice versa. No, I literally had to do all of it myself. I simply chose an instructional workbook, which I already mentioned in the past, called Astrology for Beginners. I got started. I taught myself everything. I wrote everything down like I was at school, and like I was in high school. I used everything myself. I created tables myself. I mastered everything through rigorous practice and memorization. And that's it. And later on, I found professional software. I found/purchased professional software, which I still use to this day. And the rest is history. In any case, so I can easily map in a factual manner out what a spirit's attributes are, how the spirit operates, what the drawbacks will be in general. So I deal factually. When I ask myself a question like that, when I cast an orrery astrological chart, I deal with factual. I don't deal with from a perspective. No. I deal with, hey, what applies across the board? Just like I said, what are the facts? Not as in within this system. No. Just literally across the board, as in what is the factual, again, referring to the given example that I mentioned earlier about the diesel generator. What is the factual MRSP? What's the factual market retail price of this diesel generator? Boom, 5,000. Okay, excellent. There you go, 5,000. I see everything. I see the quality, how good it is on a scale of 0 to 10, etc. I see what the potential drawbacks are. If there is anything worth mentioning, it's the same thing. Okay, I know that, hey, 5,000 applies across the board. What the chart says applies factually, regardless of which way you want to look at it, how you want to look at it. It does not matter. Conditions, circumstances does not matter. Factually, I care purely about factual information. And I remember throughout the years, out of all the hundreds upon hundreds of spirits I covered, I also could tell based on, I still remember the grimoire there, because I almost have every grimoire out there in my collection. Back when I was a beginner, I just downloaded the bejesus out of everything. And I still remember, and I can see in hindsight, how these, for example, I found myself in situations where I was like, for example, Belial, I was like, I can see where they got like the thing with Belial from, that they, for example, mentioned that he is this or that he's that. I can see with this spirit that they mention he's this, he's that. I can understand where it all comes from. I can simply identify it because, for example, with some spirits, I'll be giving a real life example in a second. With some spirits, I, for example, saw that in the grimoire in question or the magical workbook in question, that they, for example, said that this spirit aligns with Capricorn, the zodiac sign Capricorn, and therefore the spirit is Saturnian, or vice versa. The spirit is Saturnian and he aligns with the zodiac sign Capricorn. He, she, or it aligns with the zodiac sign Capricorn. And when I actually when I look at everything, I'm like, no, that's not true. No, spirit, for example, is Martian, aligns with the zodiac sign Scorpio. But, okay. For example, I saw that the spirit also has like a Saturnian flair to it, because let's just say you've got one or two planets that are also in the same house that identifies that spirit, that spirit identifies with, or that describe that spirit's skill set and whatnot. And those planets are unsurprisingly in Capricorn. For example, planet Venus in Capricorn, or thingy is in Capricorn, Jupiter is in Capricorn. And I could tell, I was like, yeah, that's why they identify. I see where they made that mistake. They simply didn't have the benefit of modern technology, or present day technology and everything. And when you have to make these kind of extensive calculations, it's very easy to, regardless of how much or how hard you try to make a small error, and it doesn't matter how small or how big the error is, a mistake essentially automatically makes everything collapse. Okay, it just makes everything collapse on you, and it turns out that a bunch of stuff isn't right as a result, because it's the same thing with advanced math. You have to solve an extensive math equation worth 10 sentences. I still remember those from high school. If you got something wrong anywhere in that equation, for example, if you got something wrong at sentence 3, everything that succeeds sentence 3 is incorrect. No. I repeat, everything that succeeds sentence 3 is correct. Everything, all the way until the end, sentence 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, no, they're all wrong. Because you literally work with a different equation, and that's what the rest of the equations are based on. So I can see where they made those mistakes, and I can't blame them. I'm like, yeah, I can see where they made that mistake. They, for example, said that this spirit they saw Capricorn, they were like, Saturn rules Capricorn, so this spirit must be Saturnian. End of story, but that's not the case, okay? So with some spirits, it's not black and white. It's not a black and white issue, okay? I still remember, for example, Satan is Jupiterian, aligns with the zodiac sign Pisces, if I recall correctly, but Satan also has like a Martian flair to him. Someone else would have said Satan is Martian, for example, if a sorcerer from a Renaissance period or before, a couple of centuries ago, medieval times, or before that, would have said that, yeah, Satan is like Martian, I see a strong Martian influence, blah, 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 blah. And he aligns with the element water. It just goes on. I can see where they get that from. With some spirits, it's not a black and white issue, as is more often than not the case. They're not just black. It's not just black and white. The same way that the keyword is versatility here. They're very versatile. the same way that we as people are also versatile. I can't just do one thing. I can do several things, regardless of what I am asked to do. I can do it all, essentially. I specialize in all of it. I can do everything exquisitely well. I'm not just confined to one skill set where I can say, okay, I can only astral project very well, and I can only summon spirits very well, but I can't do tarot readings well, etc. No. I can do all of it, literally all of it, regardless of what you want. Literally everything with me is a specialty. There is not one single thing that where I can say, yeah, nah, I'm better at this than at that. Nothing. Okay. Like I said, that was the old Moreno Ravenberg, old Moreno. No. New thing Moreno, the current Moreno, no, present day Moreno, no. I can do all of it. Like I said, I'm versatile. I'm versatility redefined, even if I say so myself. I literally am a specialist all-rounder and vice versa. But anyways, as I was saying, so yeah, that's how things work, and that's simply something that people definitely need to keep in mind. Okay, so if you're working with like the Goetia, you're working with the Lesser Key of Solomon Book 1, if it says that a spirit is this, then yeah, I can understand. But that doesn't mean that's actually the case, okay? It is the case within the confines of that system. So you can, for example, work with that outline, within said outline, you can work with that information, that alignment within the outline of that system. The Goetia says that, for example, the spirit Leraika, what was Leraika's thing again? Hold on. Leraika, where are you? Where are you, Leraika? Leraika. Where are you, Leraika? Spirit number 14, Leraika, is Sagittarian in nature. So you're going to be like, okay, so he's Jupiterian, because Jupiter rules Sagittarius. I remember saying in my video, I can't remember what I said. I think I said that Leraika was lunar, something. Hold on, let me check. Open up. Open up. Oh yeah, I remember now. He's Venusian. Yeah, I remember. He's Venusian. Yeah. And he also has a hint of Scorpio about him. Yep. See what I mean? It's an example, versatility. He's Venusian. He is not Sagittarian. In terms of how the author identified him as the author or the editor of the Goetia saw him as Sagittarian. I'm not seeing anything at surface level for why, but most likely in the author's calculations, it showed up as Sagittarian, okay? Or the author essentially astral projected to Leraika's sphere of influence, and he saw what I saw in the video as I described my video on Leraika. You can find it also in the end screen of this video if you haven't seen it already. That Leraika is like his astral, the astral plane that he rules over, that he has dominion over. So his home is just like the rainforest with a bunch of dangerous animals, just almost constantly or at least frequently just running past. Like, think of the rainforest meets the Jurassic period without dinosaurs, but every animal is like freaking huge and very dangerous and volatile and whatnot. So most likely, if that's not the case, similar point in cases, something along those lines most likely happened, and the author was like, or the editor was like, yeah, he has to be like Sagittarian, because Sagittarius deals with the outdoors, it deals with the jungle and whatnot. And he also saw the way Leraika looks, as in he looks like a man, like not a goblin, but almost like a normal human-sized troll, or an elf-looking creature, with a bow and a quiver and whatnot, like a typical bowman. So let me see, he must like hunting and whatnot, his sphere, he must be like Sagittarian. See, that's how, this is a picture perfect example of what timer is. And in reality, nope, wrong. I have the factual, I have the chart right there. Clearly says that he aligns with the zodiac sign Libra, and he has a hint of Scorpio to him. So Venus rules Libra, and therefore he's Venusian officially. Even if you were to compare it by comparing the correspondences side by side, and you'd be like, okay, let me compare Sagittarius, let me try Jupiter, and then let me try Libra, you would see that you would get better results with Libra, with the latter, so with Venusian correspondences, because those are Leraika's Those are like as factual correspondences, regardless of what you do. The only way that you can potentially get better results is if you work in a strictly goetic fashion. You purely work with the goetia, or what you want is of a Sagittarian nature. Make me a better hunter, bring animals on, I regularly go hunting, see to it that I bag a lot more animals, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, then obviously you're going to get more because what you're asking from him, he's going to utilize the attributes that were assigned to him in the goetia. But it's not the same. It's not the same. We're discussing purely relative versus factual thing here. We're talking about as well as comparing relative as well as factual correspondences. So that's simply to give you an example. I think I've said enough. Let me read from my article. In this article, I'll be touching upon something that some might seriously ponder over. Spirit correspondences, so I thereby mean that I'll explain why in grimoires in general, especially compared to what I say in my content, spirits have different attributes and whatnot. This is taking the fact that there is a good deal of misinformation and misleading false information embedded in the aforementioned attributes. All, if not most, grimoires and related magical workbooks work within a specific system. By that I mean that you need to follow the system, which is usually made up out of tools, implements, chants, orations, and so on. The general consensus is if I follow the recipe, it should work. Here is where spirit attributes come into play. Those alignments like corresponding planet, zodiac sign, and specialty apply, for the most part, purely within the scope of that system. If it says that a spirit aligns with the sun and is therefore solar, it applies within the grimoire or magical workbook in which it's mentioned, not in general or factually. So from a neutral point of view. General or factually is from a neutral point of view. Notable examples are some of the spirits I've covered in the past. The Olympic spirit Och, for example, OCH, from the grimoire Arbatel, Arbatel, is said to be solar, etc. in this workbook. I factually identified him as lunar. Yes. So there you go, and that's how the article ends. And yeah, I'm also saying the same thing. There you go. Och is another example. Okay, Och appears as like he appears as like a miniature version of the king on a deck of playing cards, like literally the king holding a sword, albeit like yay high, essentially, like a bit stunted. Okay, small. Like a meter tall or a meter long. Think of Lord Farquaad from the movie Shrek. For those of you that are familiar with the movie Shrek, the funny short ass king or emperor or whatever he was, Lord Farquaad. I think it was like a joke Farquaad that he turned into Farquaad. In any case, that's what Och looks like. Obviously not ridiculous, in a very serious manner. And he has the same like wavy locks that judges used to wear, but blonde, but it can be any color in general. And he rides a small donkey, but generally speaking it's a noble steed that is the same size as him, that essentially is customized for him. Okay, so they go well together, and usually that tiny horse, like a pony, always prances around. So not just regular galloping, like prancing, chup 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 chup. The same way that nobility used to like prance around back in the days, the way you see in classical, medieval, or Renaissance movies. Now, within that grimoire, the Arbatel, it said that Och is solar. Literally, I can take out the Arbatel. Arbatel, where are you? OCH, stupid thing. Load quicker. I ain't got all day. Yeah. Okay, now let's see it. Where are you? Let me zoom in. It's written in Old English, obviously. Yeah, Old English. Och governeth solar things. He giveth 600 years with the perfect health. He bestoweth great wisdom, giveth the most excellent spirit, teacheth perfect medicines. He converted all things into most pure gold and precious stones. He giveth gold and a purse springing with gold. He that is dignified with his character, he maketh him to be worshipped as a deity by the kings of the whole world. He had under him 36,536 legions. He administrateth all things alone, and all his spirits serve him by centuries. Yeah. And then you have seal, obviously. Yeah. And that's the description. Now, you heard it. All the attributes, everything. These are purely solar attributes, okay? These are purely solar attributes. I also came across this in like the Grimoire, the Order of the Pentacles, the Greater Key of Solomon, the Order of the Pentacles. Spirits that are mentioned therein. Even back as a beginner, I had the sense of mind to know that, hey, listen, just because a spirit is mentioned on a pinnacle of, for example, the planet Jupiter, doesn't mean explicitly that that spirit is Jupiterian. One of my veteran spirits that I've been working with since day one, Lord Burial, beautiful lunar angel Burial, is just that. He is lunar. He's lunar. Okay? Nothing else. He's lunar. He's mentioned on one of the pinnacles of Jupiter, the same ones that I have tattooed here, I think. Yeah. It literally says, its angel is Burial. Thou shalt create it, blah, 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 on the day of Jupiter, so Thursday, etc., etc. It served well for acquiring much wealth. But, like I mentioned in Burial's article, again, you can look that up on my website or similar. Look Leraika up on my website, on my YouTube channel as well if you really want to. Leraika is spelled Leraikha, I think, or similar. Simply, again, just look it up on my website. I'm not going to put it on the end screen, I changed my mind. It's too much, otherwise I have too much stuff to link and whatnot. Anyways, it's also not going to be able to keep this video as short as I originally had intended, but it's not the first time, so whatever. Yeah, it's not the same, okay? Just because Burial is mentioned on the Jupiterian pinnacle doesn't mean that he's Jupiterian. Factually, he is lunar. He's lunar, and he's not just good for wealth. As a matter of fact, in Burial's article, I mentioned that he specializes, his strongest suit, honestly, more so than wealth, is destruction. But he, just like the angel Iahadiel, that is also mentioned in the Order of the Pentacles, albeit I think with one of the Pentacles of the Moon, he aligns with Scorpio. And see, Scorpio aligns, falls under Mars, so he's Martian officially, but he has a strong lunar affinity, so I can see why. Because Scorpio is a water thingy, and the moon rules water. It's a water sign, elementally speaking. So I can see the association. But Burial does not like, for example, to be asked about destruction. Ever since I was a beginner, he was one of the very first spirits that I started working with, other than Lord Samael and whatnot, and Klonak, etc. It just goes on. And he simply said, nah, I prefer to simply do wealth. People are used to calling me up for wealth, and I prefer doing that. I'm not keen on destructive working. I'm like, okay, no problemo. So it doesn't really matter to me. Besides, I did call him for wealth. It's just when I saw that, I was like, okay, you also do deal with destruction, interesting. But it's not his cup of tea. It's not his cup of tea, to put it that way. Yeah, anyways. Referring back to my example of Och, the description speaks for itself. In that grimoire, he's mentioned as solar and he can do things of a solar nature for you, but that's not what Och actually is. In my article that you'll find hot linked in specifically referring to his name and whatnot, if you click on the link on his name, I identified him factually as lunar. Och is a lunar spirit. He aligns with the zodiac sign Cancer. But see, this is another example for why. Let me look up Och thingy. See, look how long ago this was. April the 18th, 2018. That's how long ago this was. Yeah, I can see where the author of the thingy got it from. The author of the Arbatel got it from. Yeah, Och aligns with the zodiac sign Cancer, so he's lunar. But there is also a hint, not strong, but let's just say substantial or semi-substantial, a mild hint. Let's say on a scale of 0 to 10, 6.5, 6.5, 6.8. Okay, he also has like a substantial Leo-based influence, and since the Sun rules Leo, guess what? You can see for yourself what time it is. Yeah, so that's essentially it. Close. Yeah, that's essentially it. So these are all examples of everything that I've discussed throughout this video. I can see where the author got it from. In his calculations, he most likely saw the Leo influence. They didn't have technology, like I said back then, that could do stuff easy peasy for you. Calculating something as simple as a spirit's correspondences, are you kidding me? It can take months. You have to do everything by hand. I remember as a beginner when I learned astrology, doing everything by hand, calculating exactly what zodiac sign a planet is in and which house it's in. Oh boy, that thing just was such a pain in the ass. I still remember me with my little pencil and pad and everything. I was like, it took me like an hour, I think, to just calculate one chart. I was like, holy crap, this is a pain in the ass. With a chart, you can easily do it. It's like doing math by hand and then doing it with a calculator. Nowadays, we can easily just do this. Okay, let's see. I need to do my taxes. You're done in 5 minutes, in a matter of speaking. Imagine if you didn't have a calculator, you had to do everything by hand. Okay, 2,685 plus 3,552 plus 1,601 plus 10 plus 12.5. Yeah, it's a real pain in the ass, believe me. I remember as a kid, we didn't have calculators back then in the 90s, early 90s. Not the likes of which you easily have them now. So no, we didn't use calculators. We had to calculate everything by hand, and it took a while. So you can imagine what it's like for you can imagine what it's like for someone like that, you know, how much of a pain in the ass it was from someone from like the 13th or the 15th century. And this guy saw like the Leo influence, and he was like, Leo, so that means that Och is solar. Okay, makes sense. Even if you were to successfully summon Och, like for example, these guys can successfully summon Och, you tell these guys, hey Och, you know, are you solar? Och is going to say yes. That doesn't mean that Och is lying to you. Och is simply going with the flow, because he, point one, wants to work so that he can gain more experience. Doesn't matter what you ask him. And point two, he does have a Leo influence, but it's not his strongest influence. Even these guys, just like people, they don't know their specialties all too perfectly, as in, hey, this is how I work, this is what I do, etc. Nah. Okay, that's one of the things that, as an exceptional measure, makes people essentially more advanced, ironically, than spirits, despite the fact that you rely heavily on these guys. Almost you're at their mercy, so to speak, as well as up to a certain degree, literally, the extent to which God has given them dominion over the human world. We as people, we can advance well past our, at a spiritual level, well past any conceivable boundary, honestly. Like Father Almighty God is the limit, okay? That is literally the limit, as well as any other limit or constraints he places upon anyone or the world as he sees fit, as is his will, as is everything. But these spirits, generally speaking, are fixed to their positions and their offices, okay? So if this spirit rules a certain thingy, unless God says otherwise, it's not happening. So he stays there. It doesn't matter whether it was the case ever since the beginning of the dawn of time, blah blah blah, etc. Yes, okay, because that is their duty. But even they don't know themselves, the same way that people don't know themselves. If you ask someone, hey, what are you good at? What are your natural talents? People don't know in general, because they have no way of measuring themselves. They don't know themselves well. Know thyself is one hell of a challenge for the majority of the world's population. People don't know what their strengths and weaknesses are, what their natural skills are, what they're good at and what they're not good at. It requires a heavy amount of self-examination before you can seriously make some factual statements, things that are based purely on fact. As in, hey, I'm good in this, I'm good at that. It's the same thing with spirits. So he doesn't know, and it's the same way that someone would say, hey, can you, like, for example, I can give it a shot, but someone says, hey, can you write novels? The same way that I would say, yeah, sure, why not? Spirits, they have a tendency to also act the same way. For them, it's a chance to spread their metaphorical wings and actually expand, and it just goes on. So in Och's example, for example, or in Och's case, I mean, he he is aware of the fact that he has some that he has some Leo-based ability. He has some Leo-based ability, and that he has something to offer in that department. And not to mention the fact that sorcerers, essentially, some of them, depending on them, some of them also have a tendency to be nonchalant. They have a tendency to be nonchalant, and they were just like, okay, summon you. Hey, help me out with this. They automatically assume that what they saw, okay, no, he's solar. Okay, hey, do this for me. Hey, do that for me. Now, also can do solar things. Not to mention the fact that he has a substantial amount of experience because he's had guys calling him forth and summoning him to do solar things. Hey, heal this person for me, heal that for me. And he's enjoying it because it makes him versatile. He gets more experience in doing stuff like this, despite the fact that it's not his natural skill and specialty. But again, like I said, these guys, they didn't know any better, nor can I blame them, because if I were in their position, all you can do is make the best of things the way they are. If you're limited by the conditions and circumstances of that time or of that era, that time period or era, then there's nothing you can do. All you can do is just make the best of things in the relation, as is the case in general. You can't break iron with bare hands, after all, as the saying goes. But again, by current standards in this era, we've already evolved up to such a devastating level, to the point where I can literally factually tell you that, if I were to, for example, enlist Och and I were to tell him, hey, listen, I'm going to start farming, I would like you to help me out, just guide me through the whole process on how to become a successful farmer and how to grow everything I want to grow, essentially. Och is definitely going to be able to easily help me out up to devastating extents, up to devastating levels. Compare that to if I were to ask him for something solar, as in, heal me, and let's just say it's an even playing field, both things are equally hard to do. I don't need to point out which one is going to be, which one he's going to be much better at. He's going to be much better at all things of a lunar nature. He's going to help me build my agricultural thingy a lot quicker, my farm and everything a lot quicker, and my crops will grow up to devastating extent thanks to him, compared to if I asked him to heal me, and the job is equal in terms of difficulty and whatnot, generally speaking, compared to my agricultural ventures and aspirations. It's going to take longer because it's not his natural skill. He does have that as a specialty, but he's going to be better at the former than the latter. Let's just say, simple example. Let me see. I'm going to give you factual stuff. On a scale of 0 to 10, as things currently stand, from a neutral perspective, the average person wanted to work with Och, agriculturally speaking. To what extent can he help them? Between 0 and 10? 8.5. Okay? Now, for healing, okay, something that, from a neutral perspective, healing the average person on a scale of 0 to 10, how well can he heal the average person? 5.6. See what I mean? Okay. Agricultural ability, 8.5. Overall solar ability, including healing, 5.6. That is his thingy. At absolute best, 7 healing, or 7.5 in wondrous cases where tremendous offerings are made of pure gold and silver and whatnot. And agriculturally, fixed as a specialty at 8.5, with offerings and whatnot, 8.5 stays the same, but the results will be permanent, essentially, or at the very least long lasting, and they will be consistent, as in literally consistent, down to, metaphorically speaking, the last second. See, I just did that. Quick mind delving, I got the answer. See the difference? That's exactly what I'm talking about. So there you go, and until next time, bye.